So, sole proprietor versus LLC. Okay, I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible. You can always talk to your tax attorney and your CPA to determine what the best option for you would be. I'm going to give you some basic information here. So, a limited liability company is a legal entity formed at the state level. An LLC exists separately from its owners, known as members. However, members are not personally responsible for business debts and liabilities. Instead, the LLC is responsible. As a sole proprietor, that is more of an uncorporated business owned and run by one person. This option is the simplest, no muss, no fuss structure out there. You are entitled to all the profits of the business. However, unlike an LLC, you are responsible for all the liability. Okay? Now, I'll break down some more here momentarily. Let's move on to the next slide. So, sole proprietor, again, actually, with an LLC, your personal assets are considered hands off. When it comes to business debt, collection, or other claims, if your company is sued, in most cases, creditors can't touch your home, car, or personal bank accounts. In a sole proprietorship, there is no separation between you and the business. You are entitled to all the profits along with all the debts and obligations. You can even be held responsible for liabilities caused by your employees. Okay? So, as far as the taxation goes, taxes are passed through taxation. So, that's where you'll report your business's income or loss in the same way. The difference is that as a sole prop, you don't have the option to file as a corporation. So if you want to choose different types, like an S Corp, C Corp, partnership, those options, you'd have to talk with your CPA to figure out what the best option for you would be. Now, in simple terms, going back to everything that we just read, okay, I want you to think about it like this, okay? Now, let's say you're operating as a sole proprietor, okay? It's just you, it's David Chavez, and you're working your business. You're a painter. You've come on board. You've gone through the course. You decided to say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to operate as David Chavez. That's going to be my entity, and I'm going to work. Okay, great. It's you yourself. You start off by yourself, and you're working, and then you go to a project. You inspect it. You get the bid submitted. You get the bid approved, and so now you're out there working the actual project. Okay, so you're out there on the job site, you're working and you're painting, and then you accidentally spill some paint on the ground, right? You spill some paint, and a customer is walking through the aisle and they slip and fall and they break an arm. They go to the emergency room. In the emergency room, they're going to ask them who, what, where, when, how, and obviously they're going to file a report at the store, and then it's going to come back and tie it back to you. Okay, so let's say you've been in business already for 5 years. It's going really great. And then let's say you have your house under your name, right? You have a few cars under your name. You have a vacation home. You have your bank accounts. You have your retirement accounts. You have assets under your name. And let's say that for some odd reason, your general liability policy wasn't paid for. Or let's say that lawsuit was beyond the capability of what your liability policy would cover, right? And now their lawyer, let's say it's something so drastic that this person can no longer use that arm. It's completely broken, or they're completely disabled, right? Or it's something very major, right? They're unable to work anymore. It's a devastating situation, and so now their lawyer is coming after you to be able to get compensated so that their client can get compensated, right? They can't work anymore, so loss of wages, right, for the next 20 years. All their medical bills, right, need to get paid for. There's just so much at risk. And so let's say your liability policy is not going to pay for that. So what's going to happen is, and the reason it won't pay, it could be many reasons, right? You had the wrong policy. You were doing, I don't know, painting, right, when your policy was actually for framing, or you were supposed to be a carpenter, or whatever, right? Let's just say your insurance company denied the claim, or they did pay, but it was beyond the amount that your insurance was for. And so now they're coming after you. And so they take you to court, and they can force you to sell your assets so that you can pay for this settlement, so that you can pay for their medical bills, so you can pay for their loss of wages, so you can pay for all the expenses that they've accumulated because you decided to go about and place your business under your name. And so now all your assets are under your name, and so they're going to force you to sell everything so you can compensate them. Now, if you have an LLC, right, which is a limited liability company, it's like having a brand new person to life, right? It's like you're breathing somebody to life. It's like you're breathing another entity into life. It's like a new baby was born and that baby was Chavez Painting, for example, right? David Chavez was the owner of um, Chavez Painting. And so David Chavez was a member of the LLC. And let's say that same situation happened, right? And they were sued. Chavez Painting was sued. Now, the general liability had coverage up to $1 million. Let's say they had $1 million liability policy, but the lawyers still wanted to come and get more, right? Because they felt that 2.5 million was adequate for that customer to get paid. And so, because the business entity didn't have any other assets under its name, the business entity, the LLC, can now go bankrupt, can now close down, but nothing will affect David Chavez because David Chavez um, assets were under his name, and it's completely separate from the entity that was actually working, that was actually under contract with the client to perform this work. So Chavez Painting and their insurance policy paid up to $1 million, and that was it. The company went bankrupt. You can close your company down, and essentially you have the ability to just dissolve that entity, and they've been paid for up to that max limit, but none of your personal assets were touched. So nothing impacted you financially at all because this lawsuit only went as far as the LLC could provide. And so that is an option why you would potentially want to get into an LLC. But again, it's your choice. It's up to you. You get to decide whether you want to continue as a sole proprietor or you want to separate your risk, right? You want your personal liabilities to be separated from your business liabilities. And so by separating those two things, you remove yourself from being sued if in the near future your business gets tremendously busy and super successful, and everything that you're buying is being acquired through your personal name instead of your business entity. And once your business entity gets a lawsuit, then that business entity can get dissolved, but you'd still have all your assets under your name. So just a couple things to think about whether you want to do sole proprietor or LLC. Speak to your tax attorney, speak to your CPA, figure out what's best for you, and let's get moving on to the next video.